Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Djuma Game Reserve here in the Sabi Sands, South Africa. My name is Scott, and it's a beautiful hot day today. The Inyala that we've just seen, I think we're drinking down at Treehouse Dam just before we arrived here, and we also saw some zebra heading off in the opposite direction, so I think our timing was a little bit off for coming to visit the dam, but good to know that a lot of the animals are frequenting this dam. There were about 10 or 12 Inyala in that small herd that we saw, and they've headed off now. But what we may be able to assume is that there'll be more animals coming down to the waterhole to drink. So we will head back down there. We're not far from it now. There was just a few big old Cape Buffalo bulls relaxing in the water.
Start and end your day on safari. Every day, twice a day through January 31st, join a real African.
Only 15 minutes into the drive now, and we've just left Treehouse Dam, and myself and Brian on our way across to Arathusa, which is another property that we have access to, but haven't spent too much time across there, and certainly look forward to heading back to explore that area. I'm also hoping that the guides across there are going to have some interesting sightings that they can share with us, as there weren't too many vehicles out this morning on the Djuma property, and when there's not lots of vehicles out, it can be harder to track down animals. There was a little bird that I've personally never been able to show you, and it seemed like it was going to sit around for a few seconds, but sadly it headed off. But it's still potentially, well done Brian, and it's a black-crowned chagra. A really pretty bird, and one that's quite shy and secretive, so we don't see them often. We hear them more than we see them. And thanks to Brian's nifty camera work, we've managed to recover the situation, because it's always a tricky thing for us knowing when to stop and attempt to film something, because so often, especially with the birds, they'll fly off, just as this one did, but thankfully not too far away. Safaris, and newer to the WildEarth, we'll show you in the book afterwards. Well, it can't go much higher in this bush, so it's going to have to fly out at some stage, and at that point, oh, Here it goes.
Oh.
Well done there, Brian. And I'll just show you now in the book. It's this bird on the middle. And it's got that very distinctive white stripe over its eye, or black crown, you could say. And if I just shift my book to the left a little bit, you'll see the spelling Tchagra, Tchagra. So an interesting spelling, an interesting name of a bird, and there's only the black crown and the brown crown Tchagra that we get in this area of the Kruger National Park. So just the two of them at the bottom, and we do seem to see the black crown more commonly here than the brown crown. Okay. Just got a question through from Ruthie asking whether there's any updates on the Djuma Pride of Lion that had broken out of the reserve this morning. And Mark had gone out today during the day, had left the reserve, and on his way back in he did see one of the young males pacing up and down the fence looking for, trying to call the rest of the herd. Have you got that angle there, Brian?
Yep.
Looking for the rest of the herd. Sorry, the rest of the pride. This giraffe has just made me so excited because they're few and far between now, Ruthie. So that is why I've been distracted from your question. But basically, as far as I'm aware, and Mark will be able to enlighten more with you, but it sounds like one or two members of the pride are out of the reserve and the rest of the pride are stuck back in the reserve. So I'm not sure why the Sabi Sands management have not got on top of this faster, but then again, it's not our job or responsibility to get involved in their business. So at this stage, there seem to be some out the reserve and some in the reserve, and hopefully we will have some more clearer updates later on, but that's essentially what I heard from Mark just before we came out on drive. So not the best news regarding them, but it's too soon to panic. Oh, there's more than one giraffe. I've just heard another one walking around, so I'm just going to try and drive ahead. Incredible, their camouflage, and it's a male and a female, and I wonder if this male's...
Start and end your day.
Okay, I'll send it to you now. Well, I'll call it out to you now. Fucking retard. Okay, just take down this number so you can call him and find out what's going on.
Afternoon everyone, welcome to the side of Djuma. My name is Mark and VM is with me on camera this afternoon. And we are experiencing some... Oh, there it is! I knew there was an elephant here and he's heading towards the dam. We might be lucky enough to actually get him going down to the mud path. And he seems to be on his way down towards Djuma Dam. So we're going to try and make our way down there. I thought I heard elephant from camp this afternoon. I can hear an ear flap from 100 yards away. And no, sorry, not this road. This is the road that takes us too far away. But just welcome to Wild Earth. I want to thank you for your patience this afternoon. We have changed a few things, and in those changes we're experiencing one or two issues that we've never experienced before. And so, well, hello little boy. We're hoping we can resolve them while we can. There's a very big... We are now currently just on the other side of the drainage line, on the other side of the dam from Kuyatela Lodge. Beautiful big jackalberry here, where in the past we've seen Karula and her cubs on numerous occasions. And a little... Well, he's not a little, but there's a young elephant bull. There he is. Not moving too fast, but he is heading slowly towards the dam, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to eventually get towards the dam too. I can actually try and get a little bit closer to him so that when he does move down towards the water, he's moving down towards the top end of the dam where there's a lot of mud. He might have a mud bath, he might have a drink, he might have a wallow, who knows what he's going to do, but at least my aim for the day, my goal for the day, my wish for the day has been granted. I've had a bit of a long day and I've had to venture into civilization. For me, that's a mission in its own right. And there's nothing better for me than having an elephant to spend time with after a day like I've had today. So let's see if we can say hello to this little boy. Okay, the best I can do is cast around the termite mound on the back side of this big termite mound. Here we go, here he comes. Everything okay, Nikki? Final control come in. Copied. Nick, you just wanted to know if we were streaming fine. Excellent, thank you. As yet, I don't really know.
Start and end your day on safari.
Remember Rex and Tamani was one of our presenters many years ago, and a great guy. I still got a lot of respect for him, and I've bumped into him once or twice in the recent past. But I did say that there have been guests, or rather viewers, that have been asking after him, and he says to send, for those of you who do remember him, to send a really big hello to all of you. And Rex had heard about the lion breakout, and he was trying to get his cattle together. In fact, he was quite frantic because he had actually managed to collect most of his cattle, because where the lion have broken out, it's between the little village of Dixie and the gate of the Sabi Sand. They must have broken out on the Manyaleti fence line, and he was concerned about one particular cow that he couldn't find. Not to be alarming, but the area where the cattle are left to roam freely is rather a dense bush, and it was still at least a mile or so away from where the lion were. What was interesting is that when I came back in the gate, as I was signing in at the gate and paying my gate fees, the young male from the Kahuma Pride arrived on the fence line at the gate and started walking down the fence line, started calling, and he was quite frantic. So I'm starting to think that maybe it's the older female of the Nkuhumas that's outside the reserve, but the Mpumalanga Parks Department as well as the Sabi Sand, people are addressing the issue, and the plan is that they're going to dart her and hopefully bring her back into the reserve before she does do any damage, or before she does find any cattle or anything that's going to happen. I think my main concern was based on the frantic behavior of the young male, was that they were going to break out to try and find her, and that to me was the biggest threat of all. Rather, I'll personally pay for any cow that gets killed, but the last thing we need is other lion to break out to join her. But anyways, it is being dealt with as far as I know. The Sabi Sand and Djuma, everybody's on it. I did see Yuri heading out this afternoon. Maybe he's heading out there to take a look himself. But that aside, we've got a young bull elephant. Oh, he's an adult, but he's a young adult. He's about Viem's age. He's not quite as old as me, but he's just behind the bush, and he's hopefully going to the dam. Grace, hello Grace. Wonderful species of elephant out here in the Sabi Sand. Lifespan in the wild tends to be around 55 years on average, I would say. I mean, anywhere you go, you might hear that elephants will live up to 65 or maybe more. But in the natural environment, the age of an elephant is not determined by how long they can live, but how long their teeth last. And how long their teeth last has all got to do with the kind of vegetation they eat, the density of the vegetation and the corrosive nature of the vegetation, because elephants essentially, now We don't have a really great view of him now, but I'm going to stay with him for a little while because I'm hoping that we might be rewarded by him. He's probably less than 50 yards from the dam, and he's definitely heading that way. So I'm hoping that if we stay with him, we'll get to see him go down to the water and have a mud bath or a bath or at least a drink. It's a very, very hot day. Can't imagine he hasn't been to the water yet. Elephants in captivity have, obviously, because they've been given a nutrient-rich diet that sustains them longer than in the wild. In the wild, when they're eating the kind of roughage that they do, it's not so much the roughage that they do eat as much as it is the roughage that is necessary for their survival. It becomes very, very abrasive on their teeth, and so tooth wear becomes the marker for age. And when an elephant loses its teeth, well, and it can no longer eat the roughage that it needs, that is when an elephant can pass on. And sometimes it can happen in elephants younger than others, and in some places, depending on the grasses and the vegetation that they're eating, it can also change in time. But generally speaking, I'd say in the wild, although I'm still a youngster myself at just over 50 something, I haven't yet spent that much time with a single elephant to know how long an elephant lives in the wild. But and to my knowledge, 55 maybe is sort of on average, although 65 is known, and 65 maybe even going on a little bit older in captivity. Once elephants lose their last set of teeth, they can no longer process the kind of vegetation that they need to survive. You see, an elephant's stomach, an elephant's digestive system requires them to eat a lot more roughage than most animals. They can feed on grasses till their heart's content, but unless they have bark and branches and some of the really rough vegetation to push that through to make space for new material, they could literally die with a full stomach. They digest through a process of fermentation, hindgut digestion, that is aided by fermentation. And in that, if food sits in their stomach for too long, the fermentation process and the bacteria that builds up as a result of it can kill them with a full stomach. So they need the likes of branch.
Start and end your day on safari.
Copy, thanks. I think this heat and this weather is giving us problems with broadcast today. Thank you. As for species of elephants, well, we only really have the one species of elephant, the African elephant here. There is debate over the forest elephant of Central Africa, Gabon, Central and West Africa, where we have the forest elephants. I think there is still a debate going on now whether they are a subspecies or a separate species entirely of the African elephant, because they are much smaller, their tusk growth is very, very different, and so there is a debate going on now. But essentially there is only one African elephant, the savanna elephant, and apart from that, there are, up till now, to what we know of, a couple of the subspecies. That there was the Knysna elephant down in the Cape of South Africa, which I think now are reduced to maybe a handful of individuals that are left after the amount of deforestation that was going on, and the ivory hunting that went on there 200 years ago. Still a remnant population. There was an attempt to boost that population by taking some of the Kruger elephants down there, but it's just such a vastly different habitat. I don't think that worked, and I think that the elephants that still exist in the Knysna.
Start and end your day on safari.
Apologies for that little electronic interruption. Completely forgot to switch my device off. Did that affect anything? Did you hear it though? Don't think you could do more. I think that's all you can do. Or not?
Are we live?
Huh?
Are we live?
I think so. Okay, he's not going to get you on the radio though. Okay, copied, will do. Thanks, Nikki. And so we are experiencing a rather unique problem with our software at the moment on the computer. It's got nothing to do with our broadcast signals for a change. It's all got to do with software, and so what we need to do is we need to stop the computer, restart the entire computer. So we are going to be off air for a few minutes. Please bear with us. We are experiencing unique problems, so we will be back shortly. I'm going to stay with us, Ellie. Scott is still out there. He's going to try and find something. We are going to try and bring you the best that we can this afternoon, and we'll be back with you in a very short time. Thanks for being patient, everybody. Sit quietly while we watch you. He's eating grasses now. The best we can do for now, based on his behavior. I don't want to I don't want to stress him. I don't want to push him. I don't want him to change what he's doing. All I merely did was just remind him that I'm with him. And it's nice to be here, Mr. Ellie. I've noticed in his left ear 3 very distinct holes that I don't recall seeing before. And it's funny because I was asked quite recently, how is it that you notice or you recognize leopards and you recognize lion, but you don't really recognize elephants? And well, there are some elephants that we do recognize, but it's like a city of people. We're living in a city of elephants, and of course there's some of them we see regularly and there's some that we've never seen before, as opposed to living in this little village of lion and this little household of leopards. It's all relative, really. Good afternoon, elephant sir. You really are a pretty boy, aren't you? You're a handsome young man. And all we want to do is share you with the rest of the world. And if there's some way through spending time with this Ellie that brings a little bit more awareness or just highlights the problem with it, your children, your grandchildren, or Woodland's kingfisher gave him a fright. Look at that. Right above us. One of the last of the woodlands. Well, as I was saying, man's greed is causing the decline of these magnificent, I'm not going to call it a creature, I'm not going to call it an animal, mostly because of the connotations that come with it. This is a being, this is a sentient being, this is a thinking, breathing, feeling, heart pumping, emotional, and I could go on. To a lot of us on this planet who become the silent minority, rather, we can't understand how that active we, the silent majority, there's an active minority that seem to be destroying them at a very, very fast rate. And it's surprising how we're not able to do anything about it. But here we are, we're in one of the biggest wildlife areas in Africa. We're amongst a population of one of the largest populations of elephant in Africa. In the Greater Kruger National Park, and we're sitting with a bull who is as wild as any elephant. We are merely meters away, but he is comfortable with us. He has turned towards me when I was coming in here to view him, but that is because I was sort of driving over some dead twigs and driving over some dead wood making noise. He did turn towards us, he flared his ears, mostly to listen and to check, but I suppose also to test my reaction. And it's very much my reaction that governs his behavior subsequent to that reaction. And as long as I remain calm, and as long as I don't threaten or I accept him, he accepts me. Until maybe he gets tired of my voice. But I'm going to keep quiet now. We're going to watch him quiet. We'll listen to an elephant. Absolutely amazing to be able to spend time with in such a circumstance. To be a human and to be accepted by something that has been so persecuted by humans. That he's not threatened by our presence. He's feeding, he's carrying on doing what he's doing. He turned his head back to see if I was going to follow him. I'm not going to follow him right now. I'm going to let him disappear if he goes into the bush, but I know where he's going, so I'm going to try and get out of where I am, because I can't go forward to follow him, but I'm hoping that if I go a different route we can meet up at the same place and we can see him when he gets down to the water, because I think he is eventually going to get there. And now I'm going to have to pour through hundreds and hundreds of photos to see if I can find an Ellie that has that combination of 3 little holes, low, medium down, not quite low down, sort of halfway down his ear, and then there's, if you have noticed, there's another hole. I just saw it now. It's almost behind the fold of his other ear. He just told me to shut up, so I'm going to keep quiet for a bit. Who was that from? Oh, James. Hello, James in Kansas. Kansas City, Missouri. Welcome to our drive this afternoon. Just can't believe this. This kingfish is still sitting above us. We often see drongos, fork-tailed drongos, following elephants, hoping to catch insects, but this elephant's actually had a woodland kingfisher, probably one of the last of the season. My guess is actually it might be, I'm looking at its tail and I can see some of the tail feathers that are still growing out. So I'm not sure if it's a youngster that was born this year, about maybe 3 months ago when the kingfishers were breeding. Tail still growing out and still a youngster on his way for his first migration back to where they come from. Hello kingfisher, yes, I'm talking about you, and thank you for turning around. However, that electric blue on the back is really pretty. We're going to miss these children. We're going to miss them terribly, and it's only when they're gone and we don't hear them every day and we don't see their antics that we're going to miss them. But they'll be back. For those of you who come to Africa around November, December, they'll be back for summer next year. I would like to every day, for the next few days, try and capture one on film, because at one point there's going to be, if we don't make an effort, we won't know what the last day is that the woodland stays. We all know that their first days back are often recorded the first week in November, sort of somewhere around there, because there's always a competition. When do you get the first woodlands kingfisher? And sometimes you hear them before you see them, and sometimes they sneak in and you don't hear them for a week or two after you see them. But a remarkable intra-African migrant. Go ahead, Scotty. I'm just east of Gari Dam, or just east of Voyers with my daughter-in-law. Okay, copied. Okay, copied. I'm not too sure what's happening at the Voyeur's Mast, but also Scotty's coming back from Arethusa. He's making his way back this way, so hopefully you'll get his picture back again soon. I'm going to stay with Ellie while we've got some good signal and while we've got no problems. Elephant bird. I wonder, I should try and get a photo. I mean, when do I get the opportunity? I raised kingfishers once. I was once presented with 2 newborn woodlands kingfishers, and the only reason why I knew they were woodlands kingfishers is because of that beak. Actually, I didn't know they were woodlands. I knew they were kingfishers. They were these little pink things that just had the first little inkling of a feather coming out of their skin with this big beak. They were about this big, about an inch and a half. There were 2 of them that were presented to me. I was working at a lodge down in the southern part of the Sabi Sand. This is, I'm talking about probably 20 something years ago, and I had no choice. I got back to the lodge after a really long morning, and I was given this huge apple box, and in the corner of this little apple box with these 2 tiny little pink things, the guys, the staff had been out collecting wood for the lodge, and in one of the I don't know how they managed to come about it, but somehow they managed to find 2 little suddenly homeless woodland kingfishers that became woodlands. Unfortunately, one died, one became an adult, just like this little child, and used to fly around the trees outside our staff village, and it would come and meet me. It would actually fly to me and nestle into my neck every time I'd get back home after drive. And I spent all my spare time catching insects and grasshoppers and all sorts of things to feed it. And one afternoon, we were all having a rest in the late afternoon, just before drive, and I heard it screaming, and I ran outside, and so did some of the other guys that lived with me, because we'd all been with it, and so everybody knew its sounds. And Basil and Paul with 2 other guys that were with me, ran outside our rooms just to see this goshawk taking this little kingfisher away, and that was the last we saw of it. But well, what can you do when it's in the talons of a raptor at 35 feet? Kevin in Boston. Does it have a blue pigment, or is it light refraction? Hello, Kevin. I think, Kevin, in respect to most of what we see, it's all about light refraction. It's all about the wavelengths that are reflected back at us as what we see is, rather than pigment. I don't know. It's a good question. It's a good question to explore. It's a great question to try and learn a little bit more about what it is we see when we see color. How much of life that we see is light refraction, reflection, or light filtering. And when you consider light wavelengths and the concept that most color that we see is merely reflected light rather than the actual pigment of an individual cell or organism or creature. Let me pose a question to you, Kevin. Is the blue that I see the same blue that you see? Or, to maybe see it from or ask it from a slightly different angle, how do we know that the color that I see, that I call blue, is the same color that you see that you call blue? Because the world that I see, and could be different for everybody, the world that I see, I merely apply a name to a color based on what I'm taught is that color, but I don't know if it's the same thing that we all see. Because so much of what we see is reflected light. And it's the other wavelengths that are not reflected that create that color. So you have all sorts of, and it's a difficult thing. I'm not a scientist. It's a little bit beyond my pay grade. The reflected light versus pigment. Something worth it's something worth looking into, but I can't worry about things like that. I just love the things that I look at and the colors that I do see. It doesn't matter to me whether what I'm seeing is merely a reflected light and other light spectrums are blocked, and that's the only light spectrum that is reflected back, or whether it is something that has its own pigment. I don't need to know the scientific details. We're going to see if we can catch up with our Ellie. We've had a really... Oh, you've been on me all this time while I'm looking at this beautiful bird. I just don't want it to fly away. Hello, Joe. A question from Joe from Wales. No, I'm not going to be able to get through there. We're going to go around and try and see if we can catch up with him. A lot of time here with Karula and her boys. That was years ago, and there are different trees that are down. Our best bet is to try and find a route to keep track of him and see if we can maybe find one or two others. I thought I heard another. Joe was asking, Joe comes from Wales. Hi Joe, great to hear from you. I don't think I've heard from Joe in Wales before. So I was asking about elephants and whether elephants recognize people who are sort of regular people in their environment. I think very much so, Joe. I think based on a lot of experience that I've had with elephants, living with elephants, I think I've probably got enough personal experience to say most definitely from a particular perspective. I think it depends on a lot of factors. This elephant that we're with now, I don't believe that I've seen him before. I don't recognize him. He's an elephant that has rather a very distinct line of little holes in his ear, one of his ears, that I'm sure I would remember. As I say, I'd have to look through photographs and see, but it largely depends on how frequently one encounters a particular individual, or an elephant encounters a particular individual human, I suppose, since that's the question. Do elephants recognize individual people? And I think it's got a lot to do with where an elephant lives and who the humans are that it either interacts with or experiences in its life. When it comes to the elephants that we experience on game drives, I think the vehicle plays a bigger role than the individual human who's driving the vehicle. And that has got a lot to do with the sound and the movement of the vehicle, and to a large extent a lot of the lodges will assign a particular vehicle to a particular guide. So the way that guide drives the vehicle, the way that guide behaves with the vehicle, it's all about more the vehicle than the guide himself. But when you're on foot, or when you're experiencing elephants in camp, as you do in other parts of Africa where they don't have elephant fencing, where there aren't these very strict or rather these very secure electric fences that prevent elephants from coming into camp, maybe you don't experience it as much, but I've almost everywhere I've lived in the past, I've had elephants living with me in camp, mostly elephant bulls, and consequently I've had occasion to spend a lot of time with them, talking to them, especially talking to them, and I know for a fact that they recognize my voice, and I know that they recognize me, everything about me. So it's, we're going to get in here, too thick in here. There's the big jackalberry, so he's not far from us. I can maybe try and make a big loop around. Or I could just leave him soon enough and let him carry on with his feeding. I really wanted to stay with him because I feel he's going to be going to the dam and he's going to be going to have a drink a little bit later. And he's certainly taking his merry time. So it's largely got to do with the circumstances. It's largely got to do with the behavior of the human. Almost got. Sorry, Mrs. Golden Orb. And how an elephant is treated. Time being, is stuck with me because we're still trying to get signal from Scott. He went over, I think he went over to Anthusa, and he's coming back more into signal range. There's an elephant right straight ahead of us. Just see shadows of ears flapping. The elephant, an elephant. Oh, good goody. Mind this buslet on. Hello, Mr. Ellie. Only you're still not down in the water, are you? You're determined to take your time. Whoa. Thought I just heard monkey shouting. Anybody hear a monkey alarming? There were monkeys here this morning. There was also a leopard around this morning. And it might be time for him to come out the woodwork. I always say wild horses won't drag me away from an elephant, but sometimes a leopard might. If I hear those monkeys, well, Scotty's coming back. Maybe Scotty can come and help me, because he'd be happy to go for a leopard. Ellie's eating grass, picking up a lot of the dry grasses. Just go a little bit forward, there we go. Maybe even a bit more. A little spike thorn just covering his face, but that's fine. You don't always have to have. Now that's interesting. He just moved a dead twig, a dead branch, and it's obviously been protecting some grasses. And it's interesting to see how elephants do this, because fallen trees and fallen branches are the very things that help not only feed the soil, but help to protect new growth. Because for most animals, whatever's growing under even a thorn branch, or even not even a thorny branch, but they don't have access to it. But elephants are able to lift up these logs, lift up these pieces of wood, and they get access, shaking off some chaff and dust. Beautiful lighting, actually. He's not quite an adult. I mean, he's a youngster. He's not in his teens anymore. I'd say he's just over 20 odd, maybe. He's comfortable on his own. 20, 22 maybe. So he's a young invincible. Elephants and their temperaments and their psyche, their growth, their development, their so much about them that is so much on a par with us as humans, that as a young bull he probably thinks he's invincible. He's certainly not a big elephant. He's going to be a magnificent bull, because he's already got some really nice little tusks on him, almost symmetrical. And I suppose at his age, with tusks like that, they can only become really nice, impressive. Showpieces for the ladies when he's in his prime. Grace wants to know if it's true that elephants' sight isn't very good. Grace, it's not so much that their sight isn't very good. I think their sight is is fine, really, for what they need it for. When you consider that elephants don't really have predators, there are, however, a relatively new development in the world of lions and elephants, compared to the amount of time they've been around on the planet. that in the last few decades lions have been killing elephant, but generally speaking, there's no need for them to have long vision. There's no need for them to look further than sort of their nose. And if we look at the position of an elephant's eyes, and when we just look at what they're looking at all the time, the head held at a normal position, at not necessarily rest, but at its comfortable position, which this elephant is doing. I mean, he's not holding his head up, and he's not lowering his head. He's holding his head at the most comfortable and energy conserving position, which is parallel to his body, or rather in line with his spine, and he's got all the muscles that help him do so. And so his eyes don't need to look out. He's not looking for danger coming. He needs to look to see where he's putting his trunk. He needs to look to see where he's putting his feet. Although his trunk feels a lot, his trunk does a lot of tactile sensing. An elephant only really needs to see the ground in front of him, or the tree in front of him, or her for that matter. And very, very so, not like there, right now. He looked up briefly. He looked up, he glanced at us, and he went back to feeding. He's got his back legs crossed. He was quite comfortable to just carry on. So it's not so much that they can't see very well. And I think this is where the myth, or the misconception has come in, is that until us humans became so intent on taking them off of this planet, or removing them from the planet, they've had no need to look beyond their nose, because they really are the true kings of the bushveld. Let's face it, an elephant doesn't have a territory. It's not confined to a specific space or place. If it wasn't for the confines of the game reserves, elephants would and could go anywhere within the geographical confines that they live in. And here in the Kruger Park, it's almost it. They have this vast area to roam in. They can go anywhere they want. They don't have to mark a territory and defend it against another individual. And that surely is the maker of a true, or the mark of a true king. Lion have to carve out a territory and establish their own place. Clancy, hello dear. How's a hire treating you today? Clancy wants to know, with the dry season approaching, with it getting dry, is it harder to have elephant sightings? Not necessarily, Clancy. I think I have to invoke the depends clause. Depends where you are. What, you just pulled up a whole tree there, young man. Wish I could see what it is. Looks like a young zebra wood, maybe, or a young acacia. Certainly being very accommodating for us this afternoon, and the light on him gives him a bit of a golden hue. Back home, with the Mopani veld that I live in, we tend to get more bulls than we do get family groups in the wet season. And well, I think there'd probably still be bulls moving around here, but there will always be ellies coming through, because there's always vegetation, and there's a very high density of bush willow, roundleaf teak, quite a lot of the plants that elephants depend on in the dry season, because there are not that many leaves about. Yeah, that's another zebrawood he's just eaten now, an entire zebrawood, little zebrawood tree. The zebrawood, by the way, is also known as it's known as ebony when it is found and carved, because a lot of the carvings that you'll find throughout Africa, carvings of elephant and those lovely dark wood carvings, people will try and sell it to you as ebony. A lot of it is zebra wood, which is better than ebony if it's heavy enough. It's not a true ebony. That lovely big tree we were next to on the other side of him, that big one up there, that's a jackalberry. That's a true ebony. That's from the ebony family. But the ebony carvings that we get are from the zebra wood, and it's very, very hard to find zebra wood now that is big enough to produce any carvings. So a lot of wood, different wood is used, and the merchants and I suppose the top end of the syndicates that are selling the curios are taking any of the hardwoods and they polish it black with shoe polish. So be very careful what you buy if you're told it's ebony, because there's not very much of it left. Terry, and thanks for your question. Terry's saying, well, asking the question, where do elephants go to die? Terry's heard about a lot about elephants dying. Where do they go to die? A lot of the time, Terry, they don't necessarily go anywhere, because death kind of creeps up on them, and it just kind of happens sometimes. What does happen with elephants, though, is if you were listening to, if you were with us earlier, I was talking about elephants and their diet and their need for roughage, the need for heavy material. That has an impact on the tooth wear, and when elephants' teeth wear down too much, they can no longer process the very rough material that they need to clean the digestive system and to allow more material in. So what happens is that old elephants, to some degree, and not always, because you don't always have this habitat available, but in some places it is known that elephants tend to go to wetter, grassier areas, because the only food that they can process with their final set of teeth worn down, the only food that they can get to are the lush green grasses in marshlands and things, and it's supposed that that's where they go and they feed there until they die. Elephants, once their teeth have worn down, don't last very long. Their stomachs can't handle the lack of roughage, the lack of fiber, and so the digestive system doesn't work properly, and so they can't pass material that is already beyond digestion. It stops new material coming in. How true that is, I don't know. As far as I know, look, I've never really, in this part of the world, come across elephants that have merely passed away. We've had one incident, an elephant that died that was on Djuma a few years ago. She and her family, and they eventually went south, and she died on a neighboring property. She was an old female. It was found that her teeth were worn, and she could no longer feed properly. So it's not really a case of they go anywhere special. Death doesn't allow them that privilege, or that doesn't allow them that luxury of forewarning, so that they can sort of make plans and get to a particular area. There we go, still some lovely light on him with this blue sky, although there's a little bit of cloud in the west and about to be a lovely sunset. It's really giving us some lovely light this late afternoon. Hello, Marianne. Marianne in Arkansas, asking about the tusks of an elephant, if they have roots like their other teeth. They do, but they don't. This is not a depends question. This is just a do but don't question. They do have a root, but they don't have a root like their molar, their set of molars. The set of molars have very much a root very similar to ours. with this very, very long, well, it's a root. And if you had to look at our incisors, I suppose a little different to our incisors, but the elephant tusks are essentially the elephant's incisors, the front teeth, the two front teeth. And yes, most certainly they have roots and nerves. They have a modified version of the structure of our teeth, modified in that the teeth are continually growing. So obviously the sharp root that we have with our teeth can't be there, because then the tooth couldn't grow. So there's constant growth coming in the depth of the jaw, the upper jaw, the skull actually, that allows the tusk to continually grow. It doesn't grow from the tip, it grows from the root, but it is a different kind of root. It's not a really sharp root. In fact, it becomes very, very thin and very, very narrow on the outside, but if you had to look at it internally, there'd be like this cone on the inside where all the nerves and blood vessels concentrate, getting smaller and smaller and more narrow, going into the tusk. I don't know if I can quite explain it that well enough, but the root becomes sort of around the outside of the tusk, with this hollow in the middle that carries all the nerve endings and everything that has to be there for an entire lifestyle, or rather lifetime, of the elephant. Yet it allows for enamel and calcium deposits around that ring of tooth. Well, it's time to go and have a look and see what Scotty's got. He's back on Djuma, I think, and let's go and say hello to Scott. He's been dying to say hello to you, Scott and Brian, and I don't know, maybe the sun is out this afternoon. I'm not really sure, but let's go and have a look anyway. No comment. Welcome back. I think we could probably be here till the cows come home before he decides to go down to the water, because he's now turned around and he's heading away from the water again. He's, I suppose, mostly just feeding on a lot of the vegetation that is close to the dam, close to the drainage line. This is what we're going to be seeing probably more from elephants over the drying months that are coming, is that the riparian areas or the drainage lines, the lower lying areas tend to retain a lot of greenery. There is a different composition of trees that live down here, so it is also cooler. We've lost the sun now. It's beautiful, bit of a sunset going on in the west. We are not far from the lodge. What we can see as we look at the sunset right now, unfortunately that tall pole sticking out, but that is a very important part of the lodge. That is what we call a lightning conductor. It's on one of the rooms of Vuyatela Lodge. Each room has to have its own lightning conductor because it has a thatched roof. But there is a really beautiful sunset. The only thing missing is an eagle or an owl or something sitting on the branch. Even a monkey would do. Don't think I could get the elephant to climb the tree, but it might not hold his weight. So I'm thinking that perhaps we should extricate ourselves, because it is getting late. We have a sunset. I need to go down towards the dam. We need to look. There's been a leopard around this part of the world today, and I'm hoping that he's going to be hot and tired and thirsty.
Hello everyone, being out in the bush.
And I'm going to take a little bit of a drive and see what else we can see this afternoon before we lose the light. Then we're going to be out with the light. Let's see what else we can find in the darkness. But for now, let's try and get out of this. Ow, my elbow. Find the buffalo horn. There used to be little tracks around here that we could use, but a lot of these little knob thorns, as you can see, have been pushed over by elephants that are blocking our progress. There's a baby jackalberry. I want to do anything. This little tree in front of me. There's a baby, this big one hanging over us. I don't want to hurt it. I'm going to have to go over some dead twigs. This tree, this jackalberry, beautiful tree. We've had Karula and Duna, Mishu, we've had the whole family lying in this, either in this tree or on the mound here at the base of this tree. Not today though. Yeah, money's shot. Cat's moving. I think there's a cat somewhere. We might have to find the monkey before we find the cat. Yeah, kitty kitty. In camp. these monkeys are starting to get a bit frantic. Can you see any monkeys yet, Leon? Nope. Up there on that fever tree, looking over this. Scott, come in. Wrong radio. I've got a lot of cow colouring around the lodge. I've just left this in Lorb that's also still here. I don't know if you want to come around and give a hand. Okay, copied. Yeah, you close to that Ellie. I'm just across, or at the bottom of the dam, in front of the rooms. The monkeys are shouting further where you are and down this way. Seems to be more concentrated back where we were. There he is. Let's meet up with Jigga. There's the Jigga. Snap.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What do you think about these monkeys?
Well, there's a big male here calling, and there's some youngsters calling further back. So I think the last he was calling this morning at like 7, 8 o'clock, just in front of Candace's kaya. Brent said he had a look around, couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
I think he's waking up and he might be coming down towards the water.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to go wherever you suggest.
How do you... I can't... These flies, you got 20 on your face.
I know, I'm becoming friends with them.
Okay.
Slowly. It's difficult because
you know how I love insects, you know, I'll let anything crawl on my face, but these flies.
Okay. Let's keep moving so that these flies can give us a bit of a break.
Okay.
Where do you want to go?
Well, I want to hang around here. Maybe if... I don't know what to suggest, unless he's heading out that way.
Let me go fish around in some back alleys here.
Okay. And then maybe come out on quarantine side.
Cool.
Because he might come. I'll stick around this side, you stay that side.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Oh look, here's some bones. Buffalo bones by the looks of things. Old buffalo skull. Actually, you know, while we're waiting, while we're listening, I want to show you something. Monkeys have stopped calling anyway, so they've lost sight of this cat. And hopefully this cat will come out soon. I don't know where I can put this that you can see it. I'll use the lid of my library.
On the front of the bonnet.
Yeah. I'll use the lid of my library to put that there. How's the sound? Can you hear me well enough? How's the sound? You can hear me? Good. Okay. A very old buffalo kill. I don't know, this must have been times after we were here in 2011, before we came back, because this buffalo kill was some time ago, right across from the lodge. Quite amazing. And quite a big bull. You can see how the tips of his horns have been so worn. But a few interesting things, and one of the things that I can maybe make most note of is the vast difference between our herbivores here in Africa. Most of the antelope, including the buffalo, the design of the horns, as opposed to the northern hemisphere where you have deer, and deer have antlers rather than the antelope and the bovids here that have horns. You can see that the skull is so old, it's lost all of the horn covering around what we call the boss. This is the boss. When we talk about buffalo and these buffalo bulls that lie here, this area that is normally very, very dense with horn, it's what we call the boss, going down into the horn. But as you can see, with all the horn covering, the actual keratin of the horn that is missing, you can see that there's a lot of bone that is part of the skull, that goes all the way down almost to the tips of those horns. Now what we can also see is I should be the other side. I can see what's on the monitor. But anyways, the holes and the little things that you can see coming out of the horn, those are the remains and or rather the leftovers of the horn borer moth. It's the larva of a very particular type of moth, an animal that has such a distinctive niche in nature that not really anything can take over that niche. It is designed to eat the horny, hairy, hoofy parts of animals. Horn borers actually live in buffalo when they're alive. You can actually see parts of the skull. You can actually see striations and things that have happened while horn borers have been in this buffalo's horn, even while he was alive. Really magnificent old bull. He would have been quite a monster when he was alive. One of these bulls that lie around all day. In fact, he would have been, if you want to really get a closer look, I bet you that he would have been a buffalo bull that you would have seen from the Gari Dam camera, or the Djuma waterhole camera. Gari Dam, Djuma waterhole. You would have seen him some years ago. And I wonder if they ever knew that there was a kill here. But I'm quite sure they did. Let's see what else I can find here. Vertebra amaze me. The vertebra of all vertebrates, from the smallest of snakes, which is as thin as a spaghetti and only a few inches long, to the largest, the mammals, the whales, the elephants. The shape and construction of a vertebra is phenomenal. Different shapes that we have. I can get even others, but what I wanted to show you, though, other than the vertebra, were these incredible ribs that buffalo have. And I don't know if these two actually go together. In fact, looking at them, one is from one side of the body. This is a right hand rib, this is a left hand rib, so they would be on opposite sides of the body. But what ribs of buffalo have are a very, very I don't know how to put it. It's like a blade almost. So that if this was a rib on the same side, it would actually fit behind that, so that the ribs actually form a cage, a very, very strong cage around the buffalo's lungs and vital organs. Quite incredible. Can't believe. Anyways, this was the remains of a buffalo kill from a long time ago. Hello, Mr. Elephant. Oops, dropped the lid. good few years that buff's been gone. Look at that beautiful sunset. Welcome to Africa, everyone. Welcome to our daily free show. Although, you know, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you get a sunset, it's free. Happens every day, unless for some reason there's cloud or rain. One of the most magnificent things to see every day. Sunrise, sunset. Right, let's see. Buffalo down at the dam. Leopards around somewhere. But the monkeys have been finished their alarming. Maybe we ought to head up towards Buffalo's cut line and take a look. Oh, there's a hyena. Hyena was heard. Hyena must have heard the monkeys shouting. Among hyenas actually coming down towards the dam. Let's try and get into the open in front of the water. If there's any way to find a leopard better than I can find a leopard following a hyena. And it seems to be she's coming down this way. Hello boys. You're all heading off, I guess. Where'd the hyena go? We'll just stop and see how the buff are doing. They're all leaving the water. They've been very inactive during the day. They're not leaving so much because there's been alarming as much as it is just the end of the day. It's time to get up. It's time to go and fill those tummies with grass, because that's all they've been doing all day is chewing the cud, and they no doubt have a few empty chambers to fill. There's the hyena coming now. Just there, right hand side. Buffalo are not going to take much notice of a hyena. There's nothing about a hyena that's even remotely threatening to a buffalo. One hyena on its own. Now they might display towards it. They might. Well, don't know what they might do. We just got to wait and see. That is rather unique. Look at that hyena through the horns of a buffalo. Thirsty child.
There goes the monkeys. To the left. 9 o'clock.
Oh, there. Down towards the line. They're going back to their big. Going down towards their jackalberry. A local troop of monkeys. They've obviously either lost sight of it or they're no longer threatened by the presence of a predator. They were shouting at a predator. I assumed it was a leopard because there was a leopard around earlier. Oh, the heron coming by. Good night, heron. Beautiful. It was a water thickney that just landed near the hyena. Now it's also highly unlikely that the monkeys were shouting at the hyena. No reason for monkeys to even fear hyena, because hyenas have never chased them. They've never really bothered with monkeys, to my knowledge. I guess maybe there's an odd occasion. There's always an exception to any rule, really. But monkeys they just have to get 4 feet off of the ground. They just have to get above a hyena's shoulders, and the hyena can't really do much. Different with a leopard though, because a leopard will chase monkeys into a tree. A leopard will intimidate them, will hunt them. Clearly something interesting in the grasses on the other side. Hi there, Kim. Kim in Minnesota. Looks like this blacksmith's lapwing could be on a nest. Because as soon as there's any movement, it gets up, but it's actually lying down mostly. I was looking for my binoculars because they moved from the usual place.
Is there eggs there?
Yeah, the eggs there. Well done. Yeah, especially the way it's rearranging its feathers. Now, I have to point this out. This is really remarkable. Every single day, with the heat that we have and the dry season approaching, anything up to 20 buffalo make their way down here in the mornings, spend their day down here in the mud. We've had numerous elephants, or elephant families, that have come through drinking further up the dam and coming down to this end of the dam and being very active and having mud baths. And through this all, this blacksmith lapwing has managed to maintain a nest. I think it's truly remarkable. And part of that has got to do with the fact that she or he, I'm not too sure who it is, has these black and white markings, and they're able to intimidate even the largest of mammals. They're able to flare their wings and shout to their heart's content to deter an animal from stepping on those little delicate things that they nurse so well. Truly amazing. It's such a high traffic area. I've experienced this before in an area where, as the waters recede and fewer water points are available, the density of animals increases, whereby you have hundreds of buffalo or elephants coming down to the water, yet somehow this little bird manages to hold its own against them all. Where did hyena go? Gone.
There.
Back there towards Dam Wall. Okie dokie. Let's take a ride. Thank you. We are experiencing some technical difficulties from Jigger. Ray wants to know why they nest in the open like that. Well, it's their nature. They're ground-dwelling birds, and nature has given them the means to deter almost anything. And if you think about it, how successful they are as a species, because every waterhole, every little river you'll find blacksmith lapwings. So they've managed remarkably to be able to deal with animal traffic. That's where their markings can add the fact that they'll flare wings, or should there be a failure around, they go through the wind. The dam wall and the big jackalberries down there where they sleep, and I'm guessing it's the opposite direction to where the cat might have been moving. Ellie is still in there. We're not going to be bothering with our elephant because it's getting dark. There's no way to see an elephant in the dark. I won't put a light on the elephant because they don't like light. I did get that question. It'll come to that. We are experiencing a little bit of a technical issue this afternoon. We do apologize for that. I know that Pete and Alex are working on it with Nikki and FC, and hopefully we can resolve some of these issues soon. The buffalo thorn. beautiful crescent moon above. See if we can see that through the branches of this marula tree. And listen for a bit. Oh, there's just one stick in the way. I've got a whole tree, and there's just the one lone stick that happens to be in the way of the moon. How awesome is that? Okay, don't worry about zooming out. I'm gonna just... Gravity is not working for me at the moment. So what I'm going to do is this. No, it won't work. I was hoping to balance the moon on the top of that stick. It'll take a while to get there, but I'm pointing in the wrong direction. Okay, anyways. It's the thought that counts, isn't it? Only maybe 2 or 3 days away from 2 days away from first quarter, perhaps. And Venus sorry if I didn't get your question, because I know that there was a question I was about to get to and then I got sidetracked. That's something that happens to me quite often. And please persevere. Nature's a very distracting passion of mine. There's so much happening sometimes that it's hard to keep my head straight. What I was thinking 2 seconds ago, the brain changes into different modes, but it comes from observing nature, and you observe one thing and you sort of in one mode observing something, and then suddenly you see an entirely different creature and the brain just suddenly switches completely because you got something else to deal with it. Go, Scotty. Okay. Well, one of these in car moved south towards the wall, so I'm heading up on Booby Road at the moment. Okay, I did have an MPC came down to the dam with the buff when they were leaving, but it seemed to have also headed south down to Dams Road. No, I'm heading north up on Booby Road just in case we went that way, because the monkey stopped shouting. I think that's why the hyena came along, to see what they were shouting at, and then nothing happened further, so it went south. I'm going north up towards the full of that line. Okay, thanks. Hey, you too. Night jars in the road. Very difficult to identify a nightjar. Just like that. Very, very difficult. Mostly we identify them by their calls, but the nightjars are so very similar. This is what the same family as the bird called a whippoorwill, night. Well, the night jar, because they're nocturnal, they have a jarring sound with their wings. They make a jarring sound with their wings. Often very beautiful calls. The most common nightjar that we get here will be the fiery neck nightjar. It's a very melancholic call. And the Mozambique nightjar, which has a very almost mechanical type of call, sounds like a little pump, that continuous purring sound, like a little pump, like a fish pond pump. Now what we're going to do for the next for the next while until it's time to say goodbye, since the sun has gone down and we have darkness descending, we're going to see if we can find you, other than the nightjar, which is a nocturnal bird, maybe another nocturnal bird or two. We're going to see if we can find a nocturnal mammal. It's a lovely, warm, humid evening. It's really, really hot this evening. Really good night to maybe have a reptile in the road. Not too much in the way of insect activity. We've had some very cold temperatures and very dry conditions, and both of those tend to dampen the insect spirits, as it were. And they start, well, end of the wet season, they tend, as adults, a lot of insects tend to die off now, having performed their function as adult insects, meeting up with another insect and laying eggs, or preparing for a new flush of adults next summer. Interestingly, a fork-tailed drongo in the road. I think something flew into my throat. Or dust, maybe just dust. But my cat didn't come this way. Buffalo, 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 buffalo. How many times do I have to say buffalo? How many buffalo do I see? Another one, another one, another one. Hello children. I'll try not to disturb you. Dim the lights. Put off the side LEDs. I don't want to shine on them too much. These are diurnal animals and there's no real need to look at buffalo at night, because it's just not necessary. Let's see what we can find on this road, the main road, our northern boundary. These buffalo are coming in from the north. These are not the same buffalo that were at Gowrie Dam. They are buffalo that were at a dam here north. I don't know what those birds were. Little dam called Tambwiti Dam, and they're making their way down south towards Gowrie Dam. Probably Another bunch of the bulls that we usually see make up the 20 odd 23. I remember the question. Now I do. I can't remember who it was from though. It was about rodents. What sort of rodents would they chew on the bones? That buffalo skull, buffalo kill, the remains of that buffalo. Yes, they would. In fact, porcupine, which is the biggest rodent that we have, is known to take bones back to its den. They're quite famous for gnawing on bones. But some of the larger, I don't even know. There's such a variety of rodents. I wouldn't know which ones they would be that might be chewing on bone. But it's not only rodents. We have kudu and giraffe even that will pick up bits of bone and chew on them. Animals that might have a slight calcium deficiency. Although it's mostly rather kudu, the likes of kudu and giraffe that I've noticed, the larger herbivores that engage in osteomastication or osteophagia, as the process is called. Getting Nicky, no. Okay, sounds like we got Scott again, so let's go over to Scott and see what he's up to. Although I'm not getting Nicky. Now.
Welcome back, and first of all, I would like to sincerely apologize for anybody that had to hear the horrible words come out of my mouth earlier. I was cursing in frustration as I thought we had lost broadcast, whereas we hadn't. Anyway, again, humble apologies, and we've got great news though. Over here, hiding in the grass, in between the two tracks on the road, is a snake that we've yet to share with you on this production so far. Sadly, at the moment, we cannot see it. We saw it slithering into the middle of the road there, and it seemed to have taken shelter under that small branch. It was about 12 inches long, about 30 centimeters, so not a monster, but a highly, highly venomous snake, the puff adder, and it's got incredibly beautiful markings. Now, what I may do, if it doesn't come across in the next minute or so, I might just get out and just usher it across the road so we can get to see it slither across into the grass. And then we can carry on, because at this stage, we've already been waiting here about 10 minutes and it hasn't crossed onto the other side of the road. It was moving from right to left. So what we'll do is we'll usher it in that same direction that it was heading. So I'm just going to get a little stick and see if we can get it to slither across the road for you without impacting too much on its evening's plans. Here it comes. So, just a brief glimpse of an incredibly beautiful snake, the puff adder, and I tried to just nurse it across the road, like I said, in the same direction that it was heading in when we initially saw it crossing into that middle grassy patch. And what an awesome snake to see. It's one animal that I would really love to show you that we don't see very often, sadly, any snakes, and that was certainly one of the most dangerous in this area and also the most beautiful. So very fortunate that we got to share that with you, especially after all the technical difficulties we've experienced this afternoon, and I do apologize for that as well, but it gets made up when we have great little sightings like that. Anyway, we shall continue on now, and our plan was to head down to WildEarthTV Dam, where Mark was earlier, where he heard some monkeys alarm calling, and he's now moved out of that area, meaning that it's worth us checking around, and maybe we'll be able to find the leopard that was heard calling in this area this morning. From earlier on today. I think it's a nightjar. Yeah, it is. Let me just get my bar. No, it is. We can creep up to it though. this is a very pretty bird called the nightjar. Difficult to tell exactly which species it is, as there are many different nightjars that we get in this area that all look very similar, and you almost have to catch them or have them flying or see their wings in slow motion to be able to differentiate between the different ones. And they like to sit on open roads or logs like this where they've got clear vision above them, and you'll notice they've got very, very big eyes, and these eyes aid in them being able to hunt at night, just like an owl. So they're nocturnal, fully nocturnal hunters, and often let off beautiful calls in the evening. The fiery neck nightjar being one of my favorite nightjar calls. And who knows, maybe later on this evening this one will start calling for us, and when they do call, that's also a much easier way for us to identify them, easier than looking at them, as their calls are all quite different. Well, we'll leave it on to its own devices and let it carry on catching bugs. Hopefully it's catching one or two of the flies that have been pestering us. It's incredible how they've populated in just a week that I've been gone. There weren't nearly as many around a week ago. I'll go again with that question, please. I'm not sure if it was for snakes in general or that specific one. Okay, we've got a question that's just come through from Bruce in Pittsburgh. Good evening, Bruce, and welcome on board with us. Bruce is asking a question related to snakes, which is very relevant considering we've just seen one. And Bruce is interested to know which is the largest snake that we get in the reserve, and what would it typically prey on? Now, that's a great question, Bruce, and it's an interesting answer to both questions. The snake is a python, and I guess across the world, pythons are often the largest of the snakes that you find in certain countries, but the largest one here is the African rock python, or to be very specific, the southern African rock python. You get a North African and a Central African rock python, if I'm not mistaken, that all look very similar, but are different nonetheless. So they get up to 6 meters in length. Now, that in feet would be about 20 feet in length, possibly more, possibly a bit more than that. And it's a massive snake, about this thick, the girth of their body. And I've never seen one that large in the Sabi Sands. The largest I've seen in the Sabi Sands got up to about between 4 meters, possibly up to 5, but certainly not a 6 meter one. I've found down in Zululand, the east coast of Natal, which is the province that I'm from, midway up the east coast of South Africa. There you get some monsters, and that's where I've seen my biggest pythons. Now, in terms of prey, they can catch and eat prey as big as a fully grown male impala, horns and all. And what often happens is they manage to swallow the impala, but then the horns or quite often puncture the flesh of the python, but that actually doesn't harm them too badly, and their digestive juices are so strong that they digest through the keratin sheath of the horn as well as the bone, and the wounds clear up and the python carry on unaffected. So incredible to believe that there's a snake large enough to catch and kill the fully grown impala. So yeah, that's the largest, but non-venomous. It constricts their prey, unlike the much smaller puff adder that we just saw now. That's very small, but highly cytotoxic venom. So if that snake bites you, your flesh basically falls off your bones, and depending on the severity of the bite, you may have to amputate a certain part of the body, if not have a lot of medical treatments and reconstructive kind of surgery and skin grafts to get your body back to the way it was in the beginning. So that's one of the more nasty ones, even though it's smaller. Now I'm just going to have a quick pan around the edge of the dam here, Bruce, and see if there's anything else of interest for us. We have actually seen a tiny baby African rock python. It was a newly born. It probably hatched within a few weeks of us seeing it, if not days. And it was about 40 centimeters long, and I'm sure it's in the archive somewhere, but we got some great footage of this beautiful newly born African rock python slithering across the road. But even though it was a newborn, it was probably slightly longer, maybe not as thick as that puff adder that we've just seen. So there doesn't seem to be too much going on at the dam here. But what we'll do is we'll continue and check around the road network that links us behind the Vuyatela Lodge, and it is the area where monkeys were alarm calling as well as leopard were heard calling this morning. I believe there have been a considerable amount of bush babies seen over the last few night drives, so that's great news and an animal I really hope to share with you. But here's another interesting animal, no problem, that I've spotted that is far easier to find at night than during the day. And you'll notice in the center of the shot there's a slightly palish shade of a leaf that's in the shape of a chameleon. And that is indeed what it is. I can try and get a little bit closer because I didn't realize a bit too far away. So let me creep up a little bit more. We can have a quick glimpse of this fairly interesting reptile. The reason why it is easier to find them at night is because they lack the dependency to camouflage well, seeing as though it's dark, and therefore often become a very lighter shade relative to their surroundings, whereas during the day it would have been blending in far greater than its coloration now. And that lighter shade, plus their very stereotypical shape with their tail rolled up like that, allows us to spot them. And this is the flap-necked chameleon. It's the only type of chameleon we get in this area, and it is fully grown. This one, they don't get too much larger than that. And hopefully what we'll be able to do is, as we continue to explore on these night drives, try and find some of the newly hatched ones from this season that are tiny and really cute, often found just standing on a blade of grass. Good. Just got a question through from Grace. Good evening, Grace, and welcome along board with us. Grace is asking how we keep the venomous snakes away from camp. And it's difficult to keep them at bay, but by ensuring that you don't have rodents, and this applies to all the lodges, any rodents, or therefore having good housekeeping and secure rubbish bin areas that pests will not be attracted to, the snakes that feed on those pests will also not be attracted into that area. Whereas if you've got a lot of rodents and food around that the snakes like, then it can be problematic. So thankfully, because the Djuma team do run a tight ship, we don't have any rodents, and we haven't seen any snakes in and around the camp. The camp managers, however, have been a little bit unlucky. There's a certain species of snake called the Mozambican spitting cobra that tend to like infrastructure, possibly because one of their prey items are geckos that they like to feed on, and that is one animal that camp environment does cater towards, because the geckos do well. They feed on all the insects that are attracted to the bright lights. So we can occasionally get them coming in, but they are a difficult animal to keep at bay. I'm sure there's a few different theories as to certain products or potions that you could put around the perimeter of your fence, but I think it's safer just to keep an eye where you're walking and make sure there's not many hiding places in your bedroom for anything to slither into and get comfortable in. Good question though, Grace. Thankfully, even if you do come across snakes, and even the highly venomous ones, they aren't prone to biting you, even only if you really pressure them into it. So that is something to bear in mind. And even when I ushered that puff adder across the road, it didn't once strike at the stick or even get close to striking at the stick. So it goes to show you, even though I was intruding on its space, it didn't feel threatened enough to a degree for it to attack. Oh, big one. Yeah, that's a big one. Well spotted, Brian. So Brian's got the second chameleon of the evening, and it's a monster. So this is an example of how big they can actually get. Difficult for you guys to see from that angle, but that hiding up there is a monster flapneck chameleon. Sadly, very difficult for me to reposition because its head is behind a branch. But well done to Brian for spotting the second chameleon. Let me just try and reposition slightly, very slowly, and see if we don't get a better angle. Perfect sense for the way it lives and the habitat that it lives in. So it's easier for it to walk along branches and stay firm and steady. And it can also use its prehensile tail that's curled up like a Swiss roll. Very difficult for us to see at this angle, but it will also use its tail in order to balance. There, the tail is just curled up a little bit lower there, at a tricky angle. And interesting, this one seemed to have far better coloration than the other one we just saw, which is abnormal, so we got lucky to spot it. It was obviously forgot to turn off its camouflaging equipment and therefore has remained camouflaged into the darkness. Wonderful, well spotted, Brian.
Oh, so cute.
So we were hoping to find you a smaller one, a baby, but we ended up finding an absolute monster. So well done to Brian for spotting that.
Yeah, now for a tiny one.
Okay. time, please, just so I can start thinking about how we're going to sign out. Okay, copy, and as Mark said, okay, copy. Perfect. Well, let me know if that changes and then we'll cut to him, otherwise I'll close off. Okay, so sadly Nicky's got no signal from Mark. And if that is the case, we will be saying goodbye on behalf of him. Anyway, there's still about 5 minutes left, so there's no major rush, but just to keep you updated on what's going on. Well done to all of you. Nicky says there's lots of great screenshots coming through of the big chameleon, and so happy that the broadcast quality has increased, because I'm sure all of you who enjoy screenshotting are getting some incredible shots, as even before it got fixed up to what it is today. You guys are doing some great work. Okay, can you just let me know what you'd like to do, please? Okay, well, a big goodbye from myself and Brian. We believe there's some technical issues, so from Brian and the Thumb, we are saying goodbye and thanks very much for following us. We'll see you in the morning. Cannot say goodbye to you. So, on behalf of Mark and Viam, who spent the majority of the drive with you, I would like to say goodbye from them, and I'm sure they're already looking forward to tomorrow's adventure. So, until then, from the whole Wild Earth team, a big thank you and apologies for all the technical issues, and again, apologies from the horrible language that some of you had to hear from me. I do apologize profusely for that. So, and well done to Nikki in Final Control with all the problems she was having to deal with in there. And we'll see you all tomorrow for hopefully a problem-free drive.